Okay, good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce our next speaker, Stephen Murdoch. He's going to give us a brief description of how the transition from magnetic credit cards to modern smart card-based was perceived as an increase in security, but actually it gives way to new fraud attempts and to new attack vectors. And here's Steve Murdoch. Enjoy the talk.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Roughly. Oh, no. Okay, that's better. Okay, so I'm going to describe some work that me and my colleague Sar Drimmer have been doing at Cambridge on the chip and pin system. That's the smart card payment system that's used in the UK. So a rough outline of my talk is I'll first give some background to the chip and pin system, and then explain what a relay attack is. Then I'll give you a video of where we demonstrated this, and then I'll discuss one fix against relay attacks, which is a distance bounding protocol, and I'll give a demonstration of this. So chip and pin is the UK implementation of EMV. EMV is a smart card payment system, and it's used in pretty much all countries apart from North America. It's now being deployed in Canada, and it's been fully deployed across most of Europe. And since 2006, February 2006, it's been mandatory in the UK. I mentioned in the slide that the banks make very grand claims of security. It was said to be a safer way to pay, but when you speak to the banks as a victim of fraud, then they'll say that there's no way to clone a chip and pin card. What I'm going to show is that you don't need to clone it in order to attack the system. So it uses PIN at point of sale. So I've done this in Germany to get my hotel. When you put your card into the slot, it asks you for your PIN. It checks the PIN is correct, and if it is, you can go ahead. The card itself can do cryptography. In the UK, it can only do triple DES, which is called static data authentication. In Germany, there's another system called dynamic data authentication, where it can do RSA as well, but the relay attack applies just as well to both types. And relay attacks is one type of vulnerability, but in the later section of the presentation, I'll describe some others. So here's roughly how a smart card EMV transaction works. So firstly, the card holder plugs their card over here into the terminal that's controlled by the merchant. The card has a key on it, K, a cryptographic key, and the bank over here knows what that key is. So the customer puts the card in and types the PIN into the terminal. The card checks whether the PIN is correct, and if it is, it sends a cryptogram, shown here, to the terminal, and then from the terminal, this is sent to the bank. The bank will check whether this is the real card being used, and it can do this because it shares the key, and if it does, it allows the transaction to go ahead. This is called online authorization because the merchant's terminal needs to talk to the bank in real time. So it will either use the internet or, more often, ISDN in order to connect to the bank. The merchant account is the type of bank account that you need to do this. But if for some reason you can't connect, for example, you don't have a phone line, or it's engaged at this moment, then you can also do offline authorization. This is where the merchant's terminal checks whether the card appears real, and there's a public key certificate which allows it to do that. But because the merchant doesn't know this key, K, it can't confirm whether whether the real card has not been cloned. Whereas in the more secure system, dynamic data authentication, which isn't used in the UK, you can also do a public key computation with the card, and it will confirm whether the card hasn't been cloned. So let's suppose I'll take an analogy of, say, I want to beat a chess grandmaster at chess, or even draw with him. Let's now suppose that I barely know the rules of chess, but I'm not a very good player. There's absolutely no way I'll be able to beat a chess grandmaster. But how am I going to do this? Well, one thing is I challenge 2 chess grandmasters and play a tournament against them simultaneously. And when my opponent makes one move, I look at that and then make the exact same move to my other chess grandmaster opponent. This means that at worst, I'm going to draw. I'm certainly going to play a very good game, and I'll probably win against at least one of them. Now, you can do the same with credit cards, because the card knows a secret that I've got no way of cloning, but I can ask it questions, just like a terminal can ask it questions. And then I get the answer, and once I've got the answer, I simply pass it on. I get the answer from a real card, and then I pass that on to a real terminal. And because the card doesn't have any display on it, the card holder who's sitting in front of it doesn't know how much money they're authorizing to spend. So you might think you're paying in a shop for a €5 bottle of beer, but at the same time, the accomplice of that shopkeeper is in a diamond store buying a $5,000 diamond, and you've got no way of seeing this. So we mentioned this in the paper a few years ago, that this was possible, and the bank's general response, actually to everything that we seem to do at Cambridge, is that the Cambridge people are very clever, and we find it very amusing, but this is laboratory conditions, and it's not actually going to work in the real world. So we wanted to see, will it work in the real world? When I was at the previous CCC, I might have shown you a video of a chip and pin terminal playing Tetris. Now, this was fun. We released it in Christmas Days, something silly. It went on to Boing Boing and a few other tech websites. But the real reason we're doing this is to demonstrate the relay attack. But I'll show you the video of the chip and pin terminal playing Tetris. I hope. Okay. So I thought when we did this that if the voting machines can play chess, then at least my one can play Tetris. So this is a real chip and pin terminal. We ripped out most of the insides. These ones have a proprietary microprocessor on them. So rather than reverse engineering that, we put in our own hardware. It's an off-the-shelf card reader, so it reads the card. If you put a real card into it, it will say your name because the card has your details on it, and it plays a reasonable game of Tetris. So now we've got one of these, we can see, can we actually do a relay attack in practice? And I'll show you a quick video, it's about 6 minutes, from the BBC Watchdog programme, who filmed us doing this for real, in a real shop on a Cambridge High Street. Hopefully sound will work.
Hello, good to see you. We're live from the office where tonight, as you may have seen on the news, Watchdog is asking if Britain's banks are playing fair when someone steals money from your account.
Unless it was your fault, the bank's own rules say that they should give you the money back. But lots of you have told us that that's not always what happens. They could even blame you. And it's all to do with this, your chip and pin card.
Now, when these came in last year, everyone says it could be cracked. Well, wait till you see what we've been able to do on an ordinary high street. That's coming up later.
If someone stole your bank card and used it to withdraw money from your account before you'd had a chance to realise it was gone, you'd presume you're entitled to get your money back, wouldn't you?
Imagine if the bank said no. Imagine if they told you it was your fault, that you'd been negligent, that the only way someone could take your money is if you'd given them your PIN number.
This is a chip and pin card. The UK switched them a year ago. They were supposed to make our transactions more secure. The irony is that when things do go wrong,
It now looks like we're less protected than we were before.
In the days when proving that you'd authorised a transaction involved producing a piece of paper with your signature on, it was relatively easy for everyone to know whether you'd authorised it or not. The banks have introduced a system with a PIN which simply takes that clear proof away.
In the past, if your signature had been forged, by law the banks had to pay out. But there is no law to cover PIN transactions. The only thing protecting the consumer is the banking code, a voluntary code of practice that all banks are signed up to.
The banking code says it's up to the banks to prove that you've been negligent. If they can't, then they have to give you your money back. But that's not what's been happening. Since chip and PIN came in, it's up to you to prove that you've done nothing wrong. The reason the banks take such a hard line is because they assume chip and PIN is unbreakable. But the banks are wrong. We know of at least one way that chip and PIN can be vulnerable.
These Cambridge University researchers, Stephen and Saar, are about to show us that they can access chip and PIN information from somebody else's card. Here's the victim, one of our team about to pay for his lunch. It's going to prove very expensive. In a bookshop a few doors down the road, Stephen is waiting to hijack his chip and PIN details. He'll be using a fake card linked to a computer hidden in this backpack. Stephen has an accomplice. Saar is working in the cafe where he's tampered with the chip and PIN machine. Instead of sending information to the bank, card details will be sent wirelessly to the computer in the backpack instead.
Got a customer.
Ready to go, Saar tips off Stephen in the bookshop, who's in position to make his own purchase. It's more expensive, but he doesn't plan to use his own money. The customer in the cafe keys in his PIN to pay his £5 bill. As he does so, his chip and PIN details are automatically sent to Stephen in the bookshop.
PIN is 8046.
He enters the hijacked PIN to buy his books. It's all gone through. Both the chip and the PIN have been read by the terminal in the bookshop. The victim in the cafe thinks he spent £5. In fact, his card has been charged £50, but he won't be able to prove he didn't spend it. If chip and PIN is not 100% secure, then the bank should not be turning down compensation claims from its customers on the basis that the system cannot be beaten.
It seems that when a customer rejects a transaction, the bank's first response is really quite cursory. It looks to see if the PIN was used, and if it was, it says it must be the customer's fault, without considering any of the other possibilities, and I think that is quite monstrous.
You need to have someone who is working for the merchant. That's true. And there have been plenty of frauds where that's actually happened. The common scenario is not where the owner works, but where it's a member of the temporary staff. So, for example, a waiter could do this. And I'll show a photo later on of another case where the merchant is participating in the fraud. So could you, it's hard to hear, could you speak a bit louder or maybe get a microphone?
If you use a CVT 700, which is commonly used at gas stations or stuff like that. If you use a CVT 700, ZVT 700, into the microphone, yeah, okay. If you use a ZVT 700, or in German ZVT 700, you don't even need a PIN number because you can just put in the EC card and deposit something.
Yeah, so there's lots of different ways of doing this. In my case, when we did the demo, we took the safe option, which is where we used a voice synthesizer. It's Festival, if you've used it, which reads the PIN as it's typed in, and then it sends it over Bluetooth. But in fact, all the terminal does is it sends the card